Welcome back, guys. Another video by your host, Eric Slide, and I would like to talk about today Battleship Captain Skills in patch 0.5.3. So, this patch brought a few new skills, and some of them are pretty cool, some of them were completely useless, some of them got moved around, and I really want to discuss about each battleship line and what this means for you, what you might want to do. So let's start with USN. The USN line has been the weakest of all the battleship lines. It has the most notable weaknesses in terms of speed until the end, and then it has notable weaknesses in terms of dispersion. Actually, it has those in the entire line. So let's see what you're going to want to do with your captain real quick to maximize efficiency with your battleship. So this is a test I was running on my Iowa. I just wanted to see how manual armament played out in the training room. It plays out very well. The only problem is that the manual secondary guns on American battleships don't have a lot of range. So that really just diminishes that value quite a bit. So in hindsight, I wouldn't even bother with this skill. So endgame, you're going to be wanting to get the Iowa or the Montana, or both. Depends on you. I have both because, quite frankly, I like both ships. I like the way they look, their aesthetics. It's the only reason I have them, because functionality-wise, they're inferior to their Japanese counterparts. Let's go look at the skills on my Montana, and I'll explain why I chose these skills and why I probably won't be getting a 5th level skill. We're going to review all of them, all the skills. I'll explain the changes and how they relate to battleships. So let's look at Expert Loader. So what this says is minus 50% to reload time when shell type is switched. This only applies if your salvo or your guns are all reloaded. So if every single one of your guns are reloaded and you need to switch to HE, you would halve your reload time because of this skill. So let me explain to you why this skill is completely useless. If you know where to shoot on a destroyer with your armor-piercing shells, you can one-shot it. If you know where to shoot on a destroyer with high explosive shells, it is unlikely you're going to do enough damage to one-shot it. Which do you want to do to a destroyer that is approaching you? One-shot it, or have it survive and make its torpedo run? Obviously, the answer is one-shot it. So, quite frankly, this skill is useless. It's still useless. I think the only way this would be useful is if it actually worked. Let's say you had 2 guns reloaded, okay? And 2 guns loading, because you fired your forward guns and your aft guns are reloading, or aft guns are loaded rather. You could switch, and then all of a sudden your aft guns would have 15 seconds to reload HE, and your forward guns would have 30. And this way, at the very least, it would still have some use, but it wouldn't really. No, the skill's just terrible. Next, basic firing trainer got a nerf. Now, this doesn't really matter for battleships, since, I mean, all their secondaries are under the caliber, and even if they were over the caliber of 139 millimeters, it counts for all secondary batteries anyway. It adds plus 10% to your AA efficiency. Now, the Montana and the Iowa have the best AA because that's the USN flavor in this game, and you're going to want to probably get this since CVs seem to be on the rise again, especially IGN CVs, and it just turns out that IGN CVs really have benefited from this patch a lot, in my opinion, anyway. So has the Midway. The dive bombers now on those ships are pretty crazy, so you want to be able to continue to shoot down planes at a good rate, and this will help. Ship survivability is still useful, but then again, I mean, you want to save your repair to just not flood out or have fire or have fire on your ship. So you really, I mean, this is like a subpar skill to take. A lot of people do not take situation awareness. They feel that knowing that you're spotted isn't that useful. They'd rather assume that you're always spotted. Let me explain why this is not true. You've got a skill at tier 2 that lets you know when you're being shot at, right? If you have this skill and you know you're spotted, you're probably going to get shot at, right? If you have this skill and you're spotted and you can't see anything, probably a destroyer or a cruiser with good camo nearby, right? If you don't know any of these things because you don't have this skill, what's probably going to happen to you? You're going to eat a lot of torpedoes, or you're going to get alpha striked by a cruiser. And believe it or not, a Zhao or a Rune at close range with AP can easily shave off 10,000 or more of your health. And if that's all you have left, then you're dead. So situation awareness really is a great skill to have. It's probably the best, if not the only skill you should take at tier 1 if you're going to skip this for AA purposes. So these two skills are the only ones we'll talk about for battleships. I'm going to ignore all the aircraft skills. They don't really apply for battleships. There's one you can take, but yeah, no, don't take it. Expert marksman got nerfed as well. Now, 0.7 degrees on your guns still will make them turn faster, your main batteries. And let me explain why this is important. Your main batteries turn really slowly. If you need to track a ship or track a destroyer and eliminate it quickly, you need as much turn rate as possible without sacrificing a module spot. So expert marksman will do that for you. There's nothing else here to take. If you look at torpedo armament expertise, this doesn't apply to a battleship on the USN line. It doesn't have torpedoes. If you look at fire prevention, this actually reduces the risk of fire to you based on their chance of starting a fire on you and your fire coefficient. So let me explain what that means. If I'm in a Zhao, I have a 20% chance of starting a fire on a Montana. Well, a Montana has a coefficient that lowers that chance already. Let's say it lowers it to 15%. Minus 7% of 15% is negligible. 10% of 15 is 1.5. So minus 7% is around -1. So instead of a 15% chance to catch on fire, now you have a 14% chance. You're going to give that up to shoot your guns, aim your guns a little bit faster? Don't think so. If you've taken situational awareness, you don't need incoming fire alert. Why would you? Situational awareness will let you know when you're spotted, and if you're spotted, you better believe they're going to shoot you. Next, Last Stand. Well, I gotta tell you, Last Stand isn't very valuable on a battleship. First of all, battleships tend to have tough compartments. Be it their engine, be it their guns or their steering, they don't get knocked out that often. And when they get knocked out, you're usually also on fire or flooding. So your repair will take care of both. Last Stand isn't really going to help you. And in all of these skills, Expert Marksman really is the only one you'd want to take. When we get to Tier 3, you've got Torpedo Acceleration, useless again on USN battleships. High Alert, a possibility, and you having your repair up more often is great. The thing is, minus 10% isn't enough. I mean, it's 6 seconds off the skill. It might save your life once every 10 to 20 matches, but that's not statistically consistent. So High Alert really isn't going to save you. Now, Vigilance got buffed. Previously, I said Vigilance wasn't worth it. Vigilance now got buffed, so if you're using the Target Acquisition module and Vigilance, you can almost double the range that you see torpedoes initially at, and this is really useful because now destroyers are launching torpedoes like crazy. And destroyers are going to be everywhere in patch 5.3. If you want to be a battleship captain, you're going to have Vigilance. This skill here makes all destroyers with long range even more dangerous. Plus 5 knots to torpedo speed is no joke. So you're going to want to see them as soon as possible so you can make course correction changes and hopefully dodge these torpedoes. Your other choice would be Superintendent. Quite frankly, with the changes to the skills, Superintendent is no longer as valuable. I would submit to you in a battleship, that, especially a USN battleship, you'd want Vigilance. You want to keep your eyes out for those torpedoes coming at you. Catch them before they hit you, so that way you can dodge out the way. Next, for Tier 4 skills, we have Demolition Expert, which increases your chance of fires. I have heard of some people taking this skill for their secondaries so that they burn targets down more quickly. Now, USN Battleship secondary range, again, is really low, so this isn't an option. I'll discuss this when I get to IGN battleships shortly. Personally, I don't think this skill is worthwhile in a battleship. Even in a Montana, which sometimes has to use HE to damage Yamato, to get any kind of damage on a Yamato, it's not statistically significant. your shells already have a crazy chance to start fires. You don't need an additional 3%. It's negligible. Advanced firing training, well, we all know this skill, or some of you may not, in which case I'll explain it a little bit. It is going to increase the range of all your secondaries by 20% and increase the AA defense firing range by 20%. And this is useful because your guns are going to start shooting at aircraft earlier. And if they're shooting earlier, your long-range guns got buffed with patch 0.5.3, you're doing more damage before those planes get to you. Super important. You want to take as few hits from these planes as possible. This will help considerably. Next, we have ship survivability, or survivability expert. This will add 400 hit points to your ship per tier. A lot of battleship captains are taking this skill. 4,000 hit points extra on a ship that has 96,000. That is less than 10% of that hit point pool. It's 5% actually. That is such a bad deal. If I were to offer you that deal, it's less than 5% actually. If I were to offer you that deal for 4 skill points based on what I just said, I hope you wouldn't take it. Sure, these hit points are completely repairable from fire or flooding damage, but I'm telling you right now, taking this skill is a big waste of points. You're better off with advanced firing training, or, if you prefer, manual fire control for AA armament. Now, the reason I don't take this on American battleships is because they need every bit of accuracy on their main guns that they can get. Therefore, I cannot use modules that would increase my AA abilities on the Montana, making manual fire control effective. And it is extremely effective. So this is an option, but not as good of an option as advanced firing training. Now we come to the Tier 5 skills. And this is where I shake my head and wonder why anyone would spend 5 points on a USN battleship here. Because you don't have anything good. Last chance, minus 30% to reload time on all types of armament if your ship's hit points is less than 10%. So if you're at 9,600 hit points in a battleship, you are dead in the next volley. And minus 30% to your reload time is not going to make much of a difference. It's a worthless skill for a battleship captain. Hell, it's a worthless skill, period. Maybe if the ship hit points was 15%, it would give you more leeway to work with, or 20%. Maybe 20% would make it OP. I don't know, but in its current iteration, it just isn't worth it. It's way too desperate. Manual fire control for secondary armaments. Secondary guns will only target and fire things that you designate by manually targeting them. Now, it reduces the dispersion for your secondary guns by 60%. On the American battleships, not good. You just don't have the secondary range. If you've got to wait for something to get within 5 kilometers of you to start shooting at them, you're probably in a lot of trouble. Let's move on. Preventative maintenance. Now, this one is interesting. It reduces the risk of incapacitation of your modules by 50%. So your engines, your steering gears, your AA, even your main guns by 50%. I can count on one hand this week, on one hand, it's actually 2 fingers, the times that I've had a main gun knocked out on my Montana. Preventative maintenance is not going to pay you back. For 5 points, this is what you're going to get? It's not worth it. You've got the repair if you need it. Your 5 points could be better spent elsewhere. You could go back up the list and spend those points on better skills. Here we have camouflage expert, or concealment expert, and what this gives you is a huge boost to concealment. Now here's something to consider. The Montana's concealment rating right now is 17.8. It could actually benefit from concealment expert were the meta not so heavily weighted for destroyers and partially carriers through the IGN line. They're going to detect you anyway. They can get close enough to. So right now, concealment expert doesn't have much value. If the meta switches over to cruisers more and battleships again, Well, in that case, Concealment Expert could be very useful because the ability to fire out of range and then cloak back up while you're turning away and reload, it is super valuable, especially if opponent's engaging someone else and he turns around and he wants to return fire. He can't. You're gone. You've cloaked. But right now, this skill falls to the wayside due to the current meta. Finally, we've got Jack of all trades, and this reduces the reload time of all mounted consumables by 15%. This is kind of useful. You can heal yourself faster, and you can launch your catapult plane faster. Not that that really is that great. It's really more for your battleship heal. And I'd submit to you, if you were going to build a really tanky build, you could with Superintendent, Jack of all trades, basics of survivability, high alert. You could build a really tanky build, but then you're going to give up on your AA defenses and your all your offensive power, which really is the staple of a battleship, even the USN. I don't think it's worth it. Although, out of all these skills, I'd have to say, unfortunately, it will offer you the most bang for your 5 skill points if you choose to spend 5 skill points. So, for USN battleships, let's look at the great skills again, just to give you an idea. We'll start at tier 5. Jack of all trades would be the top, followed by Concealment Expert, with the rest falling way behind. For tier 4, really all you have is Manual Fire Control in second place, and Advanced Firing Training in first place, with everything else being falling behind. For third, you have Vigilance, or Superintendent. Superintendent being in second place. For the second, you have Expert Marksman, and yeah, that's it. For the first, you have Situational Awareness, Basic Firing Training, and Basics of Survivability, in that order. So I hope this covers the USN battleships for you. Feel free to disagree, agree, leave comments on this part of the video. We're going to move on now to IGN battleships. So let's go to my Yamato, and I'll explain the philosophy here behind my skill choices. As you can see, they're quite similar with one major change. This ship has a 5th level skill. So I'm not going to go through all the skills again. I'm simply going to weight them and tell you why that they're more valuable or not valuable for an IGN battleship. So, basic firing training for AA defense, valuable. IGN has less AA, but the Yamato is the exception. It has decent AA. It shoots down planes at about a 10% less effectiveness than a Montana equally skilled. So it's really still quite good. Situational awareness, a must-have in all ships. Expert marksman, the faster these slow-ass guns turn, the better. You want these guns on target consistently, and boy, they are slow. The nerf, really, my gun, you can feel the difference. They turn a lot more slowly, and I have difficulty keeping targets locked in the Yamato now. Vigilance, acquiring torpedo range, or Superintendent. The Yamato used to have an overpowered heal. It's been brought into line with patch 0.5.3, so Superintendent lost a lot of value since you could literally tank your entire hit point pool of damage if you were good enough. You could tank it all and heal half of it or more. Now you can't do that. Vigilance is the clear winner here. Here you have, again, 2 options: manual or advanced firing training and manual fire control for AA armament, again, to counter the planes. And here you really only have 2 options, but this time Jack of all trades is not one. Your secondaries are fantastic. They have crazy range. If you combine them with advanced firing training and basic firing training, you're going to get great effectiveness out of targeting a ship, because you're going to start firing at them at 8 or 9 kilometers out. So that's just enough distance to start to be dangerous. And minus 60% on the dispersion of these shells means you're going to get hits. You're going to start fires. You're going to get hits. You can disable a destroyer. It starts to become pretty viable. You can combine that effectiveness with Concealment Expert. Yamato with a Concealment Expert build goes down to 14 kilometers range of concealment. That is actually enough to be super effective. I mean, that's cruiser range concealment. Cruiser range. So that makes it just crazy good. So you have these 2 options here. I chose secondary build because I like the offensive options of it. And if I had enough points, if I could, I would pick up Demolition Expert to combine the two. Just so you guys know this for the IGN, for the Yamato, and for some IGN battleships, you have to know whether they're shooting HE or AP shells out of their secondaries, and you can check that. I'll show you real quick. Demolition Expert increases the chances of fires, and that's always a good thing for free damage like that. So if we look at our secondaries here, it says HE damage, and that's how I know that, hell, man, you've got so many options for HE damage on this ship. It's crazy. You've got AP damage with the 155 millimeter cannons here. That's great, but you're really going to get most of your damage from this, starting fires, and from doing damage to destroyers. Okay, so let's move on to the sole battleship of the German line, and I'll explain my philosophy here, and why I chose these skills. So, as you can see, it's slightly different for the Germans. I'm going to explain why. First of all, this is actually a captain for a cruiser. So, the Tirpitz is extremely maneuverable. It's quick, it turns quickly, and I think this is going to be a staple of all the German battleships. So with that in mind, I don't really need vigilance as much. I'm already pretty evasive. I rarely get hit with torpedoes in my Tirpitz unless I'm sailing in a straight line for minutes on end, which rarely happens. Basic firing training, again. Look, the AA is pretty terrible on the Tirpitz, but I'm holding out that the next battleship in line and the H-41, when they're released, will have better AA, and therefore this investment will pay off. Expert marksman is key here. There's no substitution for it. Same thing for situational awareness. At Tier 3, I took Superintendent. Due to the fact of my maneuverability being so good, Superintendent will allow me to heal yet another time, extending the lifespan of my ship, which I think makes my Tirpitz slightly stronger. Since I do get it often I don't get as much damage as other ships, I end up being able to heal that damage quite efficiently this way. Now, the secondaries on the Tirpitz are quite crazy, and if this continues, I'm hoping that the H-41 has an impressive and fearsome secondary battery, which is why I took advanced firing training to increase that range. I did not take manual fire control, not yet. I want to have the stats for the H-41 first. I took concealment, and I'll explain why. Let's look at the Tirpitz's concealment rating. 12.7 kilometers. This is with the module, of course. 12.7 kilometers. I am a cloaked Romulan warbird. Now, this is if you're a big Star Trek fan. Otherwise, I'm literally a cloaked ship. You don't see me if I am outside of 12.7 kilometers range. What does this mean for fighting a battleship? You fire, you turn away, you disappear. Then you turn away at your leisure. Fire, turn away, and disappear. It is disgusting what you can do with this ship to targets who are unaware that you exist on the map due to concealment. Therefore, for the German battleship line, this personally is what I feel, in my experience, in weighing all the options, is the best setup for your battleship. For now, this may change, and if so, you'll be seeing another video on the subject. So, if you have any additional questions, feel free to leave them in chat. Rather, leave a comment. Like and subscribe for more videos. I have more on the way. And take care of yourself. Have fun in World of Warships. And good luck to you.